Hi, I'm Martin Hume Cobb from Core Education. In this short video training, which I've entitled Life's 3 Core Choices, I've covered the areas that I believe are the important areas of choice in our lives. The area of beliefs, of emotion, and of strategy. And I believe that in each of these areas of our life, we've made a choice around a core belief, a core emotional choice, and a core strategic choice. So in this training, I'm wanting to just clarify these areas and in a way simplify in order for you to access it really in any situation. Because the power in our lives, the most important power that we have, is our freedom of choice and our ability to exercise that choice is where the power is. When we have a knowledge of what the main options are and a knowledge of which of those options is going to serve you in terms of what you're wanting to achieve with your life. In this training, I'm really wanting to share a structure whereby you can create a simplified but really useful view on aspects of your life, and to be able to see in a multitude of situations that they're often at the core, there are simple choices. There's beneath the complex surface, there's underlying simplicity, and really that's what I'm wanting to reveal here. And it's particularly in these 3 areas I've chosen, which really relates to just the structure of who we are as human beings and the way that we work. So here, this idea of core belief relates to our mind, our thoughts. Core emotion relates to, obviously, our emotion, our feelings, which is just set in the base of our brain and connected up into our brain and obviously down into our body, because there's literally physical feelings that are associated with emotion. And core strategy, which relates to the things that we do. And the things we do is we do through our body. And so, it's these 3 main parts that make us up as a human being: our mind, our emotions, and our body. And probably a primary understanding is that we're not our mind, we're not our emotions, and we're not our body. We have thoughts, and we feel emotions, and we live in a body. But we are the one creating the thoughts, emotions, and controlling our body. And therefore, we're the one making the choices in each of these different areas. So this first area of choice around our mind, which at its core, the most powerful part of our mind that determines really a lot of what our feelings and our behaviour, what we do, is our beliefs. And at the core of our beliefs are some core beliefs, which I believe can be broken down into 4 main options. And obviously the whole point of this training, it's about simplification. It's about being able to take all the complexity of our lives and be able to see simple underlying principles and simple underlying structure to how we and how our world works. And that gives us a structure by which we can understand what's going on in the complexity of our lives. And have a higher degree of being able to manage those things, and also to be able to make conscious choices. So in this area of beliefs, core beliefs, I believe, there are 4 main choices. And you can see here, all of them relate to self and world, what I've called world. So self is obviously ourselves. And the world, it means our view of the world, how we choose to see the world. And that's really, it's about how we choose to see the world in summary, and taking the positives of the world, all the things that we see as good are good in the world, and the negatives, and whereby we end up deciding, making a choice as to whether we see the world as overall a good, positive place that's a great place to learn and to grow and to experience the amazing world that we're in, or taking an overall negative view that despite the good things that might be in the world, that overall it's a negative place. It's a place that's not for us, but that in some ways against us. And there aren't underlying forces and realities in the world that are there to support us and for us to connect to, but rather there are forces moving against us, and that the negative forces really have the upper hand. And this, really those 2 perspectives, we can look out into the world. And this is the thing about beliefs, is when we have a belief, if we choose to believe that the world, let's say, is a good place, we will look for evidence for that. And every time we see something that reinforces our view of the world as a positive place, we'll make note of, and will reinforce our belief. But in a similar way, when we have a negative overview of the world, what tends to happen is that we disregard or overlook the good, and we look for the negative to reinforce our belief. Because the difficulty with having a belief that's being threatened all the time, it's destabilizing, it's insecure. So people tend to want to hold on to the beliefs they have and look for evidence to reinforce it. And often those beliefs we've inherited from our family, from friends, from our culture, from society around us, from the media. And often these are unexamined. They're not, these beliefs we haven't arrived at in a conscious way, looking at weighing up the positives and negatives and questioning both arguments and looking to find that which is most real, most true. And most useful in our lives in terms of living the life that we want to live. So with these beliefs about ourselves and the world, these 4 choices, I see that the 4 are this. We can either have a positive view of self and a positive view of the world, a positive view of ourselves, but a negative view of the world. We can have an overall negative view of ourselves, but see the world as good, but just not ourselves, that we don't measure up, we're not worthy. Or in some way, overall, we're not good enough. Or we can have a negative view of ourselves and a negative view of the world. And the thing is with each of these, you can always find evidence for positive view of ourselves. If you look for it, you can also find lots of evidence for a negative view of ourselves. Because we're all flawed, we all have imperfections, we all do things that are less than what we see as ideal. And in the same way with the world, we can look for positive and negative evidence, and there's just so much evidence for both. But really what I'm really wanting to reveal here is how those core beliefs then, to a huge extent, determine our experience of our life. Because just purely logically, if we look at what the inevitable emotional outcome of each of these beliefs, these beliefs then determine how our life feels, how we emotionally experience and how we emotionally engage with our life. And so here, we'll start down here. With a negative view of ourselves and a negative view of the world, the inevitable emotional response to that is self-protection. Is probably to hide, to protect ourselves. And at the core of it is fear. Fear is a response. Within us emotionally, we have the powerful capacity with fear to be able to get energy, to get anger, negativity, really that what's called the fear, the fight, flight or freeze response. And so what tends to happen is when we've got this, is that things will happen in our world, and to a huge extent there'll be this fear response. And really, I believe, as far as our emotions go, there's really only 2 main emotional responses. There are facets of both of these. This is really about the positive emotions, and this is really about the negative emotions. And just to clarify faith, I'll just read out the definition that I've given here. Faith equals knowing that despite the inevitable pain and difficulties, life's challenges are there to provide opportunities for me to build deeper, richer, and more lasting value in my life. So yeah, at its core, what I'm using this word faith for here, it doesn't necessarily have any sort of spiritual element to it all. It's about a positive energy, a positive belief about our life and about our future. Another word for it is courage. It's that ability to believe positively about our situation even when it's challenged. And so associated with that are all the love, all the positive emotions. Because they don't exist where around fear. Fear generates different emotions from those. So another word around this is trust. But yeah, all the positive emotions are associated in here, and the negative emotions associated in here. And rather than getting into all those different aspects, I believe, there are basically two emotions. There's positive and negative emotion. And so inevitably, having negative self-belief and negative belief about the world, this is where it goes. This is when situations happen in your life, this will tend to be the response. Even if, let's say, somebody might be offering you an opportunity that's positive, because of this belief, there's just a tendency to be fearful, to not trust, to not be open, and to not take the risk of rising to the challenge and to the opportunity. Where we've got a negative view of self and a positive view of the world, we end up with the same response, because even if the world's offering us opportunity, we think that we're not good enough. We see that the outcome's going to be negative for us. And so fear overrides again. And the same's true for this positive view of self and negative view of the world. The tendency is that even if we engage with the world and an opportunity is given to us, the way that we'll approach it, because we have a negative view of the world, is that we won't be able to build the relationships and build the necessary learning and trust to really engage in the growth required to really take up the opportunities that life's giving us. And my belief is that really the only viable option is to primarily have a positive view of ourselves and a positive view of the world, that overall the world has wonderful things for us if we're willing to learn its lessons. And sure, some of those lessons are difficult and some of those lessons are hard. And I just think of myself at the age of 14, just getting sucked into the deceit of using methamphetamine and LSD and heroin when I was 15, using heroin. And these delusions and deceptions of life, in a sense, it was based around, I think this was where I was at. I had a positive view of myself, but I had a negative view of the world, and so I saw drugs as just a way of getting out of it, of just escaping this negative world. But the inevitable cost of that is that through that drug use over the next 3 years or 4 years, by the time I was 18, I ended up having a full-blown psychotic episode and really losing hold of a sense of reality and losing a hold of my mind and really ending up in this incredibly dark place down here where I had this incredibly negative view of myself and of the world, and it seemed like there was no hope at all in my life. So really being able to get free of that and arrive at a positive view of ourselves and a positive view of the world around us then makes possible a positive emotion that engages us and energizes us to be able to take up the opportunities in our life and not just run from them, or as soon as there's difficulty, end up down here. And probably the one thing, see how I've done this minor orange line down here, is yes, there are situations that happen in our life that generate fear for good reason. Because fear's been put in us to protect us. And when we react to something that seems to be threatening, this will happen in microseconds. We'll be down here and our emotion, our fear emotions, the adrenaline and cortisol, the hormones associated with fear will be pumping and in our blood and into our brain. And they have a powerful physical feeling and physical presence. But at that point, sure, if we need to run, well, it's great. Our body's geared up for it and we can go. Or if we need to fight or whatever it is, our body's prepped us for it. Our emotion has prepped us, but prepped our body to take whatever actions are necessary. But often this fear response was based on a misjudgment of the situation or an overreaction, and we need to be able to move from here and up into here and not be trapped in this reaction. And the key to transforming our emotion from a negative place to a positive place is about creating new meaning. So the first meaning of the event was that it was danger, that it was in some way a threat. And what we need to be able to do is step back and look, what's wisdom here? This question mark I've made to be this question. What's wisdom here? And wisdom is really the ability to step back and have a look at the overview and ask, okay, is this the right response? And if it's not the right response, well, what's a new meaning that I can give this? What can I learn from this? What can I gain from this? And be able to generate new meaning that brings us up into a place of positive emotion whereby we're energized to take that learning, that wisdom, and use that as a lesson in some way. So maybe next time we won't misread the situation, or even next time we'll see the situation coming and be able to manage it without ending up down here. So really, the first set of choices is around, our core belief about ourselves and the world. And the second core choice is around our emotion. And really, it's our beliefs and the meaning that we give events that determine whether we end up here or whether we end up here, in a place of fear or a place of courage. And then that determines, that choice there then determines the strategies that are available to us. And I believe that at the level of strategy, what we should do and how we should engage with the world in terms of our actions. To me, these are the core choices. To either embrace the world, embrace the opportunities around us, embrace the challenges, the difficulties, and see them as learning experiences that are building up wisdom and lessons that are valuable in our lives. Or we can have this response of escape. And of course, if fear's been our emotional response, the natural outcome of that's going to be an escape strategy. And like for me, with the drug use when I was young, it was just an escape strategy. But yet that, for me, was just so destructive at the time. Destructive of my relationships, of just all the opportunities that were around me at the time that I was missing and wasting. And really, it's this escape, often it's about going towards something familiar, some sort of comfort. It could be the feeling of a drug or a feeling of something that's not challenging. And sure, sometimes we need to rest and we need to just be comfortable and so on. But too much of that is unhealthy. We need to be engaged in life where we're being challenged and we're growing. Otherwise we're hiding, and what happens is with these escape strategies is that if we're not growing, we're dying, we're going backwards. Our brain and everything about us, we need to continue to be challenged. You don't want to have too much challenge all the time. That's just way too stressful. But we need to be able to manage our comfort and our rest and also our engagement with things that are stimulating and challenging and new, so that we can be in this place of embracing our life and embracing the uncertainty of new experiences and the inevitable growth that's going to come from that. So yeah, another thing that just this last little pathway here is where we may have this positive emotion, but we can get distracted. And the key there is to then refocus up into embracing our lives, embracing the opportunities. I'd love to finish by just encouraging you to come back with me to just that start of the training where we were clarifying that first set of choices around core belief, and just point out that that's the area that's the most powerful of all, because those core beliefs about yourself and about your world around you are actually going to be what's then determining what your emotional response is and your strategy that you're going to tend to choose. So by focusing into that area, that's going to yield the highest results for you. And this process that I've created called the Core Compass is really about building a substantial, evidence-based core self-belief that's positive and really around your unique strengths and abilities and qualities, and really about getting a clear and real vision about how the world around you is providing support for the vision that you have of the life that you're wanting to create. I'll be running the Core Compass program early in 2015. If you'd like to register your interest to get priority access to the limited places, just go to the events page on martinhumecobb.com, and we'll send you the details as soon as they become available. In the meantime, I'd love you to comment on this video, the training, what's been most relevant and most insightful for you. Also, any questions you might have, and I'm looking forward to communicating with you in the future.